would you say if I told you that this right here is the most important part of endurance training? Now, you might have heard from other people that rest and recovery is absolutely key to good training. Correct. But what they don't tell you is that you need the thing before you need the rest: fatigue. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Phily. I'm a 2:25 marathon runner, and I'm currently training to be on the elite start line of the London Marathon in just a few weeks' time. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why fatigue is actually your friend and why it is so important to get the benefits from your training. I'm going to show you how I integrate that into my training with a double threshold training day, and I'm also going to tell you how you can implement it into your training day without doing double threshold. We're going to hear a little insight from my coach on his take as to why fatigue is so important for progress, and I'm going to explain how you can use fatigue to your advantage, but also how you can tell the difference between a healthy amount of fatigue and overtraining and overdoing it. If you've ever been in marathon training before, or maybe even just training really hard for a 5K, a 10K, or a half marathon, I'm willing to bet that you felt pretty awful for at least some of that time. Maybe you felt like you had to drag yourself out the door for days back to back. Or maybe the DOMs from your hardest workout literally stopped you running for days afterwards. These are both perfectly normal, perfectly healthy examples of fatigue, provided that's not your everyday. And I'm not sitting here pretending that fatigue is my favorite part of marathon training. Fatigue is a super common and normal part of the training process, but it's also super necessary to get you to the next level, especially when it's built into your training plan with intention. If you overcook it, or it's done without intention, or you are literally just fatigued 24/7, then it's probably going to have the opposite effect of making you better and might just stop you in your tracks, which none of us want.
No.
So my job today, with 4 marathons under my belt so far, and the 5th one coming up right around the corner. That's right, I'm literally in the trenches of marathon training right now. My job is to make fatigue your best friend, or shall we say best enemy. Well, you're not gonna fall in love with fatigue, but you know what they say, keep your friends close, and your enemies even closer. So let's talk a little light running science, shall we? Why do you think that training makes you better? Is it because you do it so many times over and over again that it becomes so easy that you just become an expert? Wrong. I may be about to crush some dreams here, but it never gets any easier. You just get faster. If you're doing it right, an all-out 5K when you've just started your running journey, 25-26 minutes, should feel just as hard as an all-out 5K 3 years later when you're an 18-minute 5K runner. Yes, you got better at running, but it's not any easier. And you got better because of fatigue. Whether you like it or not, it is such an important part of improving. It's a little bit like if you're strength training by lifting weights that you've never lifted before, or doing more reps or more sets than you've ever done before. You cause muscle breakdown, and it's the adaptation to that breakdown, the recovery from it, which is gonna involve some really nasty delayed onset muscle soreness, otherwise referred to as our lovely friend DOMs. That's actually what gets you stronger. The breakdown of the muscles is the stimulus of the training, and the repair of the muscles when you're recovered and tired and hurting afterwards, that's the adaptation. That's when you absorb it and get better from it. In endurance training, this isn't just happening in the muscles, learning to become better adapted to that training stimulus. It's also in your energy system, being able to bounce back better, go further, go faster as you're going further. And it's also in your cardiovascular system. It's training your body to become more efficient at using the oxygen it has at the speeds you're training at. And the fact of the matter is, you just cannot be 100% recovered for every session and every run. If you were doing that, perhaps following the suggested recovery time from your watch to be absolutely at the pinnacle, perfectly recovered before coming back, you just wouldn't be able to train enough. You'd be running maybe 3 times a week, which if you're a complete beginner might be enough. But I can tell you for a fact that if I did that, I'd be getting slower. So by carrying some fatigue, I'm not talking crazy amounts, you can't walk, you can't breathe, you can't eat, that's something else which we'll get onto. Carrying some fatigue into your next run or your next workout and maybe only being 50, 60, 70% recovered, that's what's going to train your body to adapt to the training. And this is where concentrating your hard days comes into play. Let's say you're running 6 days a week. Having 2 key workout days, maybe one of them is an interval session and one of them is a long run with some efforts in the middle. Maybe they're both interval sessions. There's 2 days out of 6 that are hard. Other days are your easy recovery days that are there for you to run when you're fatigued at an easy pace to absorb the training. If you want to get more bang for your buck from the fatigue, and this has to be played with very carefully, you can compound those days. And an example for me is double threshold. This is a tool that a lot of the pros use where you run a threshold session in the morning and another threshold session in the afternoon. These aren't all out, okay? This is controlled at my threshold pace, but it has an extra fatiguing effect because I wouldn't normally do that volume of training in a day. Separated by a recovery window in the middle, but yeah, shock horror, I don't feel completely recovered by the time I go into the second session. Now, double threshold is not a tool that I would recommend for the everyday runner. Part of the reason I'm splitting up this session is so that I can get more miles in at threshold in a 24-hour period. It's more than I would be able to do if I slammed these sessions together and just did it in one morning. Most people should be able to do the volume of threshold training they need in one session without needing to double it up in the evening to get that training effect. But a great way of doing this for the everyday runner is by having your interval session, let's say on a Saturday, or like a pickup run, a progression run, and then the next day doing your long run. It's not another session, but it's running for a long time, and it's not an easy day by any means. You might be running at an easy pace, but if you're out there for your longest run of the week, that's still hard. That means you go into the long run with some fatigue in your legs, but it's controlled, intentional fatigue. And what that's gonna do is just up the ante on that fatigue and the demands on your body to absorb that training. The reason I say you need to be careful with it is because you are asking that little bit more of your body. You are gonna be that little bit more fatigued, so it needs to be backed up with significant recovery afterwards. Now later on, I'm going to talk about how to spot the signs of overdoing it so that you can be on the right side of intentional, healthy fatigue and not on the side of overtraining and risking injury. One of the biggest parts of that is listening to your body, but it's a really fine line because running fatigued intentionally, even when you know you're on the right side of that red line, still doesn't feel good. So there's listening to the warning signs, but also hearing the visceral moaning of your body and accepting that that's just part of running fatigued. You'll see what I mean in this session by the fact that I'm quite clearly not loving life.
How are we feeling this morning?
A little bit tired. I did 17 miles yesterday, which is a little bit more than I normally do on a Monday. And got double threshold on deck today. So probably 22 miles in total. I can't wait. Today's first dose of double threshold featured 4 by a mile and 6 by a K off 60 to 75 seconds in the morning, which Coach John and I adapted from its original form halfway through the workout because I was feeling fatigued. I was meant to have 6 to 8 by a mile, and after the first 4 mile reps, we switched to Ks to keep the volume the same, but to make it a little bit kinder to my body. We were noticing a few signs from how I was feeling that I was working a little bit too hard and going to be a little bit too fatigued from this, and as a pro runner, I'm so in tune with my body. I just knew I was working a little bit too hard today, and this was also backed up by the lactate meter readings being a little bit high. And that's totally fine. That's us adapting to stay on the right line of fatigue.
So why is fatigue good?
Philly's like, fatigue is not good right now.
Yeah.
Fatigue is too much.
No,
fatigue is good. It's change. I mean, that's anytime there's change, there's just tiredness, and we need to break down the muscles. And basically what we're trying to do is get as much work and in volume and workouts in a given period, 7 days, 10 days, a block, right? So there's just, anytime you do workload, there's going to be tiredness from it, and that's where we try to balance the fatigue.
And how, as a coach, do you measure fatigue or like see fatigue in your athletes to kind of either tell them to pull back or allow them to kind of push more?
I've kind of found that most athletes use similar vernacular when it comes to their fatigue or, what they're feeling. It's kind of hard for me to describe the vernacular other than like, yeah, I'm feeling tired and stuff like that. And just noticing the temperament as well. I feel like that affects it a lot, or like you can see that a lot. Like Philly today was just very tired and feeling fatigue for a number of different reasons. And so, yeah, like I think that was something that it's kind of hard to say, but I would say temperament and vernacular is the two easy answers, I guess.
It's hard today.
So I want to be smart with this.
I just feel really flat. Like I'm on my period. I just think it's
okay.
It's
so
just one of those.
it's related to that a little bit.
Okay,
that's fine. Here, let's wait and see this number because I want to 3.5. So that's good, right? I just want to be smart with this. So I don't want to overdo it, right? Let's listen to the fatigue. We have a second session coming back. It's not worth just like, obviously this is a question you talked about last night with me, right? The purpose is not to barrel through the fatigue and ignore it, right? The purpose is to listen to the body and react to it, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it like this, not like this, right? Hey, you're fucking crushing this. Good shit. Okay.
Another tool that can be really helpful for this fine balancing act of the right amount of fatigue can be your watch and the insights that it gives you. I'm a Coros sponsored athlete and I regularly check in on the EvoLab metrics that I get from wearing my watch and the Coros heart rate monitor for every workout and every run I do. And really, without fail, my recovery metric is in line with how I'm feeling. After a hard workout, it tells me it's time for an easier 24 hours or so, which I fully agree with. And on a rest day, it tells me that I'm ready to go at the end of it. And of course, I would always say tune into how you yourself feel, but these metrics can also be a really nice way to back that up as well. What we can see on screen now is the training status metrics over the first month of this training block. And at the top, you can see that by gradually increasing my load, my base fitness metric is tracking upwards too, which is exactly what you want to see in a marathon block, but not without recovery. And it's also pretty cool to see that I've stayed fully within the recommended intensity trend for that same time period, which means I'm balancing nicely on the right side of that fatigue line. And then for the evening session, for that second dose of threshold, we kept it a little bit shorter after a harder morning than we had planned, rather than just forcing the long reps. I did 2x K, 2x800, and 8x400. And these are shorter reps than I would usually do in the second session, but that's us adapting today to make sure that this fatigue isn't me overdoing it and forcing things. And thankfully, a few days later, I feel better for it. And who knows, if we'd have forced those mile reps or more volume in this second session, I might still be feeling the effects, which we definitely don't want 5 or so days later. All right, so we understand that starting a workout or a run already fatigued can compound that training effect and give you a little bit more bang for your buck, but I've told you need to be careful. How can you make sure that you're actually doing that? Firstly, I think we need to use a little bit of common sense. If you're introducing this and you haven't utilized it before, go gently. A little bit like testing out your fueling method for the marathon. Trial and error, and introduce it a little bit before a lot. Don't go implementing 2 hard days back to back into your week from now on. Try it and then maybe go back to your original structure the following week, and maybe that's a good place for you. Maybe rotating a hard Saturday and Sunday with then a week where you do sessions Tuesday, Friday is a good way to kind of introduce a little bit of intentional fatigue, but not overdo it. The other part is listening to your body. Now, I've already said that your body is going to be telling you what is going on. Please, can we stop? This hurts. I'm fatigued. And there's a little bit of that you need to just go, yeah, all right, I know. I'm doing this on purpose. And it's when it goes over the line and recognizing what the signs of that are for you. This is different for everyone, and everyone has a different threshold. So this is where it's really important that you get to know you yourself as a runner. Some really typical classic signs that should be red flags that you need to back off a little bit. Feeling fatigued for days back to back outside of training. I have felt like utter crap for 4 days in a row this week. Monday to Thursday, nothing felt good. There were varying levels of that, but in general, I felt pretty fatigued. That's about as long as I'll let it go in training before I ease off. Thankfully, I felt good on the Friday after a Monday to Thursday of feeling pretty naff. But I've recognized that warning sign, and today, which is the Saturday, I'm taking a complete rest day. That's my insurance policy to make sure that next week doesn't feel equally or more awful. But if you're feeling fatigued outside of the training and that carries over for, 2 or more days, I would back off a little bit. Other than straight after the workout or the run itself, if you're feeling tired repeatedly in your downtime, time to dial it back. And that doesn't mean that the way that you're training right now might not be sustainable at some point in time. It just means that right now it's too much and we need to work our way up to that intensity. Those DOMs that I spoke about earlier, if you are getting those on a weekly basis, you're doing something wrong. I'll get DOMs after a hard road race, after increasing my intensity at the gym, and sometimes after a really hard workout. So the frequency of DOMs for me is at an absolute maximum once every 2 to 3 weeks. If you're dealing with DOMs on a weekly basis, time to dial it down. And if you are experiencing red flags of being too fatigued and overtraining, another thing you might want to think about is factors outside of the training itself. These are things that might be putting you on the back foot to be more fatigued than you need to be, and not in a good way. Not in a way that's going to help your training. These are things like poor fueling, not getting in enough energy, not fueling enough before a hard workout. If you're doing a marathon style workout, not fueling refueling enough during, and not refueling enough or soon enough after training for adequate recovery. Could also be getting really poor sleep. That is such a huge part of recovering from the training, absorbing that training, and being ready to go again. If you're not sleeping enough and your sleep pattern has no pattern, sorting that out needs to be a priority before looking at intensifying your training. Sleep is like the cake, right? Adding in an extra hard day or putting in some training that makes you intentionally fatigued so that you can have a better adaptation to it is the icing on the top. And in this scenario, you can't just have the icing, okay?
But why?
And it's also not taking those rest and recovery days seriously. If you are absolutely full sending your easy runs, then you're basically just doing a workout every day. And that's a really great way to get injured. And if you've been watching my videos for the past few months, you might remember hearing me talk about having low iron. Iron deficiency is more common in female athletes because we typically have a monthly bleed when we menstruate, and that means you're going to be losing a lot of iron through your blood. Even just a little bit of iron deficiency, or on the extreme end, anemia, is really detrimental to training. It's going to give you all of those feelings of extreme fatigue, and a lot of the time it's not going to matter whether you're nailing your sleep, your recovery, your food, spacing out your training. If you don't have enough iron in your system, you're going to see a huge dip in performance, a huge dip in recovery. It leaves you feeling pretty horrendously fatigued. And if that's something you're experiencing, you think you're nailing all of those other areas but you still feel like crap, go to your doctor and ask to get a blood test to see whether you might be anemic. If you've watched until now and you feel like your training is ready to be taken up a notch and you're ready to feel a little bit more tired, don't put yourself in a hole, but add in a little bit of extra intensity on the back of a run or in between a session and embrace the tiredness. Keep a note of how you're feeling and the signals that your body is giving you. And if you're on the other end watching this video trying to understand why fatigue is important because you feel fatigued all the time, don't be afraid to take a down week. An easy week of running with an extra rest day can do absolute wonders, and if that's what your body needs to absorb the training, to reset and be able to go again rather than risking an injury or picking up an illness, it's a no-brainer. It's a balancing act. Fatigue is the training partner that we love to hate, but if you get it right, you can't deny that it makes you a better runner. I feel like I should close this video off saying love the fatigue, but just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? So I'll just say love the grind.